great to be here at CTIA. I had a little bit of a sojourn for a few years in Verizon. I had the opportunity to run our wireline business, and so coming back to wireless and coming back to CTIA, I will tell you that it's just great to see the level of innovation, the continued enormous investment that's being made to open new frontiers of growth and to drive the digital economy. You know, I think as we sort of step back from our business for a moment, we've created this virtuous cycle in which we work as an industry to connect with almost 7 billion customers worldwide. And the more they crave the freedom and empowerment that mobility delivers, the more we're challenged in a creative way to deliver the value and innovation that's necessary to meet that demand. And you know, when we think about that in Verizon terms, one of the ways we measure that is the payload that we deliver. And in 2015, in the last year, our network actually delivered over 3 exabytes of traffic. And I thought that was a fascinating data point. I have no idea what an exabyte is, but it has got to be big. I did ask the question, and my guys tell me that a single exabyte is the equivalent of 100,000 times the printed contents of all the information in the Library of Congress. So it is indeed a big number. And what's equally incredible is that over the next few years, we expect that same network payload annually to grow by another 500%. So just a stunning example of the size of this industry. And as we think about the wireless infrastructure broadly, you know, around the world, this is indeed the largest platform of technology innovation anywhere in the world, and it is absolutely transforming huge swaths of our economy. You know, when we think about some fundamental things, the first 3G device where we introduced to the world wireless data, the idea of wireless data, and then as we move forward to 4G LTE, the capabilities, smartphones, tablets, mobile video streaming, and all of the services that are effectively Uberizing our society, it's extraordinary, and it's all enabled by these fundamental networks. And then as we look forward to the prospect of 5G, we've talked a lot about that over the last few years. Imagine then that we move forward to unlock and unleash the promise of the Internet of Things, in which billions of devices are connected to networks worldwide. And it's really on this idea that I'd like to spend some time here, because at Verizon, for all of the progress we see in our company and broadly in the US and the world in this industry, we do think that we're coming now to a crossroads, a period of time where we need to figure out how we then take the next step to enable the enormous promise and turn it into a reality. So this is where I'd like to spend some time with you this morning. And you know, for years in our enterprise business, we've spent time with our global clients asking a simple question, which is, if you could wirelessly connect anything, anywhere in the world, where would you start? What would you do? And what's interesting is as you walk the floor at CTIA this week, you essentially see the answer to that question in the form of so many solutions, whether it be energy management, transportation, telemedicine, smart communities. There's just an endless list of innovation that really represents what we're talking about here. And many of those same innovations, many of those same solutions are also seen in the Verizon booth. And we're really happy to see so many of our partners from the Verizon Innovation Labs joining us there and sort of real time demonstrating the capabilities that really sort of hint at the future. As we think about the deployment of these solutions, it's really becoming very practical now. We're in the midst of doing deployments, as are many of the companies represented here at CTIA, and they're showing very promising results. And I think at the end, what's most clear is that there is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity that's facing our industry. It's right in front of us right now. And yet, the very diversity of the solutions, the almost dizzying array of opportunity, has a risk of paralyzing our industry, putting us in a position where we may struggle to move forward and truly scale these solutions at a massive level. And this is something that I think the wireless industry is uniquely positioned to solve. We have the opportunity to create game-changing platforms that will allow us to fully enable the opportunity that IoT presents. We create growth for our companies, value for our customers, and tangible benefits for society. But along the way, in order for us to achieve and overcome the obstacles that are in our way, we're going to need to look at certain key challenges very specifically. And I'd start with public policy. We're going to need to have, as an industry, a rational, thoughtful, and unified approach to the many public policy issues that potentially could create friction in the path as we go. Our ability to develop, work with, and expand the essential ecosystem to support IoT is also going to be critical, as well as a very fundamental fact. We need to relate with the communities that we hope to serve. We have to think about our engagement model with those cities in a way that then, again, creates a win-win proposition, not only for the industry, but also for the cities themselves. So this morning, we're going to spend some time on the broad enablers, sort of the horizontal stuff, and then we're going to go a little deeper on the smart cities piece in particular. I have two guests that I'm going to ask to come up and help to inform us in terms of what's happening in that space and what we can expect in the years to come. But you know, for us at Verizon, the first step is about enabling the network and what that future will require. And in that vision, we imagine billions of connected devices with many different needs, carrying 10,000 plus times more traffic than is carried today, where gigabits of data need to be transferred seamlessly and instantaneously, and the applications themselves, which will require mission-critical levels of quality and security and support. So all of these things need to be solved. And what we know is that you can't have innovation at the edge unless you first create innovation in the network layer itself. And this is kind of where we've really been zeroing in as a company these last few years. And really, if I go all the way back to year 2010, it started with our LTE network, which we deployed in that year. Today, it covers over 213 million pops, 313 million pops, 2.3 million square miles, thousands of small cells, distributed antennas to enable it. But even if we look past Verizon and think about the US wireless market, I believe that the US leadership in 4G LTE has not only enabled the enormous growth in data carriage across the country, but has also enabled an explosion of device sales in areas like connected devices, wearables, all of these precursors to the IoT revolution of the future. It is a first step, but it is a critical step along the path. Now, in the last week or so, we've just announced another technology advance called LTE Advanced. And we lit this up on August 29th, and on that day, we described to the market coverage of over 463 cities, 90% of the US population, dramatic increases in speed on this network, where we're seeing peak speeds of 200 megabits per second, a 50% increase in users' experience. Really terrific. And I raise this point only for one reason. As we talk about 5G, it's important for us to remember there's still a ton of energy, a ton of possibility in the fundamental 4G networks. Many, many more advances to come here and a lot of opportunity as we go forward. But look, 5G is an area that we've been spending a lot of time talking about. We call it wireless fiber inside Verizon. It enables an entirely new set of fixed and mobile broadband applications. I have to say that we should acknowledge the work done by the FCC and the CTIA in the last several months to enable a clear path to 5G spectrum policy management. I think that that work is a terrific catalyst to the development that's yet in front of us. If I take one more step and talk about another critical building block, you can't deploy these dense networks without first enabling a strong foundation of fiber, what we call fiber, our One Fiber initiative. And what is One Fiber? For us, this is an entirely new approach to how we think about designing and deploying our networks. And we started this in the city of Boston, where we're replacing the copper infrastructure with an integrated citywide fiber network that's designed to leverage a single fiber network to connect millions of homes and businesses across the city. That same network also being used to augment our LTE densification efforts, and then finally to prepare for the eventuality of our 5G network, which of course cities like Boston will see in the coming years. As we think about our approach to One Fiber, perhaps this idea about holistic planning needs to be explained. You know, typically when you architect a network, you build it for a particular purpose. Here we're trying to think through how you build it all the way out to the edge, how you anticipate the requirements of smart city, things like control nodes and sensors that are part of the original planning process so that it is future-proofed in terms of its delivery. The other piece that we've really focused on is accelerating innovation. driving enablers to allow for rapid expansion and scaling of the IoT efforts in front of us. We've announced a few of those this week. Our efforts to deliver CAD-M capabilities in our network, which will be commercial this year. Our ThinkSpace platform, which enables our developers to very rapidly scale their solutions. All of these things, obviously very, very critical, and they lay the groundwork for our 5G network to come. I will tell you over the last 10 months or so, we've done a ton of work in working with companies like Intel, Qualcomm, Samsung, Nokia, to develop and deploy trial markets across the United States where we have an opportunity to test the viability of the technology financially, operationally. Does it work? Is it delivering against the promise that, that's been described? We've done a lot of work in the background as well in August of 2015, working with colleagues in Japan and Korea, developing the first set of formal technical specifications, pre-global standard delivery to see if we can accelerate that process. And just a few months ago, the first US carrier to complete necessary radio specifications as well. So a lot of work being done in this space. We look back at the years from the first analog calls over the 1G networks all the way to the incredible capabilities of 5G. One thing is very clear to us. The networks we're designing and building today will be the catalysts that drive and support the digitized city of the future. And one of the things that I will tell you is that future is a lot closer than it makes people think. And to talk a little bit more about that, I'm going to introduce our guests at this point. So we have two panelists that will join me in a moment. John Roussant is the founder and chairman of the New Cities Foundation, which was established in 2010 with a vision to create a world where cities drive economic, social, and environmental progress, integrating with technology seamlessly into that vision. Also, Hugh Martin is going to join us. He's the chairman and CEO of Sensity Systems, which is the industry's leading IoT smart city company. They are driving in smart cities over 60% of all of the LED infrastructure upgrades that are going on in the world are happening with Hugh's company. Certified in 35 countries around the world, already 43 cities deployed. So these are a couple of great experts in the smart city space. I'd ask them to join me on stage now.
Yep. Hey, John.
All right. Good
How are you?
John,
See you.
thanks for coming up. Hey,
Tom.
All right. All right, gentlemen. So we're just barely scraping the surface of all of the opportunity that the smart cities initiatives happening around the world present. And maybe, John, if I can start with you. As you look out around the world, you're seeing an awful lot of activity in this space. Could you give us a feel for what are the first applications that are being deployed, and maybe more specifically, what problems are they solving for the cities that are deploying those solutions?
Well, I think one of the areas that is particularly evident is the area of transportation and urban mobility. Mm-hmm. I mean, mobility in the sense of getting from point A to point B. This is absolutely critical for anybody who lives in a city. Mm-hmm. And I think it's an area that is already being impacted massively by the kinds of technological changes that you're talking about and the wireless infrastructure that you're deploying, because that will be absolutely key to driverless vehicles, et cetera. Multimodal transportation, mobility as a service. And I think we see that already in our cities. If you look at the deployment of Uber ubiquitously in global cities everywhere. It's changing how people think about getting around the city.
Yeah, great.
And we're only at the beginning of this.
So early stages for sure, but I guess as John, you mentioned to me earlier, you know, this is no longer just an illusion or a bit of slideware. I think everybody who lives in a city anywhere in the world is already, in the example of Uber and Lyft and other companies, experiencing this directly. So maybe with that, Hugh, if I turn to you for a moment, you know, I mentioned that you've deployed your solutions in 43 plus cities around the world. Sure. Could you give us a sense for where you see the leaders sort of globally? Is there any part of the world that we can learn from here in the US? And exactly where is the US on that continuum?
Sure. The smart city implementation in general is complex. It takes a lot of players to come together to make it happen. And so, ironically, where we see most of the innovation, the greatest innovation, is in countries that have more of a top-down governmental system where they can say, make it so, and it happens. So if you look at Singapore, you look at China, There's a lot of activity there. Ironically, though, most of the innovation is here in the US, and I think as we start to think more about investing in infrastructure nationally, we're going to see a very rapid acceleration here.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, the next question maybe that flows from that is when you see from your experiences, maybe if I can start with you, John, where it goes off the rails. Are there particular issues that everyone seems to grapple with? What's getting in the way?
Well, I think one challenge is the financing piece, because if you look at the world, we as a planet will have to invest $50 to $60 trillion in upgraded infrastructure and new infrastructure over the next decade and a half, about 5% of world gross output. It's an enormous amount. Now, it's not as if the money doesn't exist. The money is there. But we have to come up with new innovative models for financing these big infrastructure projects. Yeah, and the New Cities Foundation, one of the things that we have looked at very, very closely, and we launched a study with Julie Kim of Stanford University this year to look at what are the emerging models for financing infrastructure. And it's a very key part of the equation. We have to get that right.
Yeah, that's critical, obviously. And, again, it's about the value exchange, isn't it? In terms of the proposition for the city, and not just economic, but in terms of quality of life, public safety, all of those dimensions. So Hugh, as you think about your deployments, any hard lessons learned, anything that you would point to that you'd say, boy, if I could do that one again, I might take a different approach?
Well, we spend a lot of time focusing on the sensors and the analytics that work on the edge to make sure that we can really understand in real time what's going on in the city. And we spend a tremendous amount of time on the cloud back end and the APIs so that we can have hundreds of applications that will take advantage of that. But we kind of forgot about this piece in the middle called the network. Like, how do we get all of this information reliably, 7x24, some of it very mission critical, and over a broad, diverse topology like a city. And so we have partners like Cisco Systems and Panasonic and Acuity Brands, and we work very closely with them on very large installations in cities like Kansas City or Adelaide, Australia. And in the end, what it really comes down to is how do you get the union guys to go install the network and the fiber to make the thing work, and then how do you keep it working?
Yeah, it's a large challenge on many levels. So maybe just a question for both of you guys. As we think about this room and this convention, we have the wireless industry represented here from across the US and other parts of the world. But if we focus on the US particularly, any advice that you would give to the people here in the room in terms of how we might, as an industry, accelerate the process here and move more rapidly and more forcefully into gaining the benefits that smart cities presents?
Boy, that's a big question.
Yeah, man.
Look, I think part of the key is, I think you both touched on it, is learning how to work together. Yeah. No one owns the city. And it's not an IBM, it's not a Cisco, it's not a Siemens. And I think when you look at cities and the complexity of a city, it lends itself necessarily to collaboration. Mm-hmm. So competitors are going to have to learn to work together. And I think that's also what drives us at the foundation, where we try to bring people together. Yeah. I think the city really lends itself to that. So that's a challenge, because it means new ways of doing things. It means new business models, sure, new ways of collaborating with the public sector. So I think we're all kind of feeling our way here to an extent.
Yeah, no, that's well said. Hugh, any thoughts?
Yeah, if you think about the customer, and the customer is the city, you've got the police department, and they've spent 150 years developing their own systems and their IT strategy, and you've got buildings, and you've got streets, and they all have to come together and say, kumbaya, we're going to become a smart city. And the reality is that doesn't happen. And so one of the things that I think this industry can do is provide that platform or a framework so that instead of talking about, gee, you have to make a decision to buy a piece of hardware or a server, instead you can say, gee, I'd like to have public safety services, or I'd like to have transportation or traffic services. If we can move by installing and building the infrastructure that you know how to do, from making a purchase decision about technology and into a decision about a service that a city might use, I think that would be huge.
Yeah, excellent. Well, look, we know this is a big opportunity. I think our industry broadly has an opportunity to, of course, provide the horizontal connectivity. But as we think about where those first, most compelling market-facing applications will reside, I think it's very clear to us that cities and the transformation of cities is a great place for us all to dig in. So, gentlemen, we appreciate your being here today.
Absolutely.
Thank John and Hugh for joining us on stage.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just wrap it up here. Thanks for your time and taking the energy here to invest this morning as we talk about what are some amazing opportunities. We know that the industry is at a crossroads. I mentioned earlier the need for us to meet the challenges that are in front of us in order to be successful. Tom Wheeler has said that American leadership in 5G must be a national priority, and we couldn't agree more with that sentiment. We know that more spectrum will be required. Very dense networks will be needed to support and enable those networks. We're going to have to work closely with federal, state, and local governments to find ways to streamline permitting processes and remove the barriers to infrastructure deployment. Beyond that, though, we're also going to need to address very meaningful customer concerns, things like data ownership and privacy and security. And I believe that our industry is in a very good position to address and lead in this area. We know that infrastructure is key, but it's also not the whole answer. Strong partnerships will be required to develop the vital IoT ecosystem that will be necessary to make this a reality. And open platform designs are going to be needed to make it easier for our developers and our other partners to scale their solutions. But maybe most important of all, we believe that it's critically essential for us to put the human experience of technology at the center of our thinking. Questions like this: how do we use the technologies to address real societal issues? How do we drive economic growth and solve the digital divide? How do we, in a meaningful way, improve quality of life in our communities by making our societies safer, cleaner, and more energy efficient? Look, it's clear to us that CTIA, this show this week, is a celebration of the vitality and the innovation of the mobile industry. But it's also a chance for us to focus on the challenges that lie ahead of us. We know that many industries and many companies are jockeying for position in the connected future. We believe that whoever best embraces the responsibilities that go along with the opportunities has the chance to truly create and define the future. And our belief, finally, is that there's no industry on earth that's better positioned to do so than this industry here. So again, thank you for your time this morning, and I hope you have a great conference.